So, hello everyone, Monden here with I don't know, like uh, you see the title. You probably heard what's happened. I just woke up and read that unfortunately Kentaro Mirai has passed away. He apparently passed away, I think, a few weeks ago though, but it was announced this night, this morning, whatever. And yeah, that's is really sad. He and really special. I guess my memories of Berserk and talk about the Beatles, all right. So he is of course then the author of Berserk, which I think is the just like the Berserk is like the best, the most best looking manga ever, right? Right? It's like the greatest manga ever from a visual standpoint. And the storyline, of course, so on is amazing too, right? It has this depth, the philosophy is very brutal, but especially from a graphical, it's dark fantasy, of course, but from a graphical standpoint, I mean, Berserk. I don't think there's any other mangaka that is close, right, to Murai. I think he's the. I always said for many years that that's the best looking manga out there, right? We can discuss if the storyline is the best ever, right? But from a purely artistic standpoint, like it's a masterpiece, right? And every goddamn page is a masterpiece. So that is that's just like I don't know, man. He's like an icon, he was a legendary. I mean, Berserk itself was a legendary manga, right, for so many years, and but especially also just from how his amazing art, right? And it's like I read some comment on Twitter. Someone was like, every manga chapter was like defeating the whole novella. Like the whole. You talking about Mona Lisa? I like random panel from Berserk. It was like just like every page was amazing, and the spreads for you so grand, and the details, right, and how he captured the human heart or whatever, right, and every page it was just amazing. It was just amazing. Berserk. It was always like this like legendary, iconic manga, right? You can say a lot, right? It feels sad. Of course, it feels sad. I mean, obviously sad, right? But I think that it's extra. It's just like I have read Berserk for like 20 years, okay, and I think we all know what I'm gonna say here, right? But Berserk has been on hiatus several times, and that's why it also feels like a travesty because I think you. It reminds me of something like I don't know Michael X or something like that, where you feel like, man, this guy is probably gonna die soon, something like that. Yeah, like it feels really tragic, but it's like it's like this feeling that you read Berserk, right? You follow Berserk, and you see the author Ken Muraide, and you see him being like, "Oh, I can't work for this month, or I'm gonna skip over this year, or something, right?" And you're like, "Oh, he is probably really sick, And it's been some news now that he had some heart disease, right? He died from some yeah, so on, right? But he probably has some chronic illness. I mean, I don't know exactly, right, and I don't want to speculate too much, but I'm just saying that to me, at least, to me, I think to most fans of his work, it felt like for the last like 10 years, and probably more. I remember when I was in college, I'm an old man, right? When I was in college, we discussed this topic straight up, and this is like over 10 years ago. I'm an old man, right? It's 15 years ago. Again, I'm really old. I also no, but I went to college when I was young. Though I went to college immediately when I was 17 or so, 17, yeah. But still, though, I remember even back then we discussed that it felt like he had health complications, right? So it always felt like he was I don't know pushing himself, right? He always got sick or something. Yeah, like he made one chapter, and then he was like, I'm too sick to work now. So yeah, like it always felt like he had it like sword dangling over his head, right? And you, so it almost feel that's why it honestly feels a little unreal too, because like it just feels like I'm waiting for this news. Not in a good way, but I mean, I'm like, he's gonna die any moment, right? You know what I mean? Like, you've been waiting for those. That's why I think it feels unreal too, because you've been waiting. It feels like I've been waiting to for his bad news for him for like I've been waiting for him for some tragic news with him, with Mirai for years, because it felt so long. Like again, back to when I was in college 15 years ago, talking to my friends there, we all like, man, he has to be sick, right? He's always doing this stuff. He's always, already back then it felt like, oh man, this guy he has some issues and he's gonna like, so that's, I think that's one of the reasons why it feels unreal, because you're like, oh, it actually happened, because we've been saying it for so long that the manga is not gonna be finished before he dies, right? And yeah, here we are. And that's tragic to me too, right? And I want to point out here, I don't mean tragic as in me as a reader, even though of course I want to read Berserk, and of course I hope that they have that is written down when it wants to happen and so on, right? There's some rumors that he's been training his assistants, right, to kind of finish it, but that he knew he was gonna die basically, right? Yeah, which is even more tragic. But I want to say one thing here, not to make it about myself, but to give an example of this thing. So I worked at this game company a few years ago, okay, and the company was horrible. Like the managers or the owners. I was one manager. I was a manager. But the owners, so my bosses then, right, they were horrible in more ways than one. And this is not a sad story for me. So I don't want to take some. I'm not trying to take some spotlight here, but I'm saying that it was a really bad job, okay. And but I was the lead designer, so I got to do kind of what I wanted with the game, right? I wrote this backstory, I wrote all the characters' lore, I wrote all the storylines, right? And I also designed the character mechanics, and I scripted it. My point here is that I think when you do something artistic, like of course Berserk, in this case, then I think at least as a creator, you have the feeling of you want to finish it. You know what I mean? You want to finish it. So my point here is, at least in my own experience, that when I worked in this company, I really hated working. I hated every day going to the office. Right? I hated my all the bosses and so on. People can relate. I hated it, right? And the one was an issue that they had issue with budget and salaries and all that bitch. But I kept working there anyway, because I was like, I want to finish the game. You know what I mean? I want to finish my art piece. And the way I describe it to people, because a lot of people ask me afterward, why did you keep working there when you knew that the company was going to basically go bankrupt? Why did you keep working there? But the way I explain it is like, it's kind of like if you have a canvas, a painting, right? You kind of paint this bit. It felt to me that, okay, I started painting down here, then it wasn't so bad. I couldn't see I could see the couple of issues, but it wasn't that bad in the beginning. I was the first person to hire, it wasn't that bad. And then when you kind of get up here, you kind of have painted half your canvas. At that point, you get to, oh, I hate this company. Everyone's incompetent, nothing works, and I just want to stop doing this again. But I have painted half my painting, right? I'll have to finish. I want to keep working here for another year just to be able to finish the rest of the painting, right? So that's kind of how I don't know, but I'm just feeling that it feels like a personal tragedy, not just to die, but I think as a man that spent so many years working on his canvas, right, that he kind of got up here somewhere, right, and I don't know how much he actually wanted to do with Berserk. Maybe he only wanted to add 10 more chapters, maybe it was 500 more chapters, but for me at least, or I think so at least. I mean, of course I'm just guessing what he's inside his mind here, but I think that's probably very painful, if you're a creator, even if he was very famous, of course, and very successful, but let's assume he wasn't. Even if he wasn't, right, he probably would still be like, well, I've written, 80%, 60%, whatever. But you know the point. Like I feel like that to me, I think that has to be so painful. If you're like, I almost finished my storyline, like, because I felt at least the manga was going into somewhat of an end game, maybe at least, but I felt that the cast guy kind of resolved that stuff, right. So yeah, so I think he was like, I'm guessing, but I think that's really tragic too, because you know what I mean, like, because if you don't want to say it because it sounds so mean, but you know what I mean, like, if let's say he died after he finished the manga, right, that would be less sad, and I don't mean it because I want to read the manga. So people think, oh, you just want to read the manga, oh, it's selfish. No, that's not what I mean. I mean from an artistic standpoint, it's so painful. Like I said, at least in my own experience, it was so painful for me to like like I hated that job, but I went to it anyway because I did like artistic work, right? I wrote this separate. I wrote the lore of the characters, and I had like a vision of okay, it's like 9 main characters in my game. Then I have written like 5 of the storylines, and the other 4 characters. I can have the name, I have the basic premise, but I haven't written that down yet. So I'm still gonna go to this goddamn office so I can write down all this. You know what I mean? I want to finish the story. You know what I mean? Like that was more important to me than the salary or whatever. I want to finish the story then. So I think that he has a similar. I think that's how it is usually is, and so that has to be really painful. Having worked for something for so many years and not being able to kind of add another year or 2 or whatever, especially of course because he worked with so long. Yeah. So I think that is really tragic that he couldn't finish his masterpiece. I mean, he is a magnum opus, right? He couldn't finish that the last maybe 50 chapters or whatever. It doesn't matter how much it is, but I mean, and even arguably, if it's just like he wanted to write another 1,000 chapters, but still though, it's I don't know. I feel that has to be so painful for him probably because he probably knew it himself, right? That's why he sort of trained. If the rumors are true, he probably knew it himself, right? He was like, damn it, I'm gonna die. I have to tell someone the storyline. I have to tell someone, I have to write down what's gonna happen. Hopefully they can finish after I'm dead. This is it's a real tragedy. Yeah, I don't know. It's sad. Let me tell you one of my Berserk stories, though. This is a true story, of course. Let's make it up here, but I mean, Berserk was really good. It was a really good Berserk. It's a really good storyline, and so the first time I read Berserk, actually, I watched the Berserk anime. Yeah, I found the anime on a Saturday. This is way back in the days, guys. This is back almost pre-internet. Like this is way back. We didn't have any forums. There was no YouTube really, and so on. Right? This is way back in the days. I was a teenager, and I found Berserk. The anime was pretty new, of course, by then. It wasn't the same year, but it was like back in the days there. So the anime wasn't that old when I found it, and I started watching it, and I was it was so amazing. I literally binged it the whole. I just binged it. I just kept watching. It's just such an amazing storyline, from the beginning. And of course, the anime is censored and so on, right? So we didn't get the full picture, but you know what I mean. And I just watched it. The Saturday, and on Sunday I finished the whole anime. I basically sat and just watched it, and I went up, and my mom was like, "You gotta go outside." Like, no, I don't want to go outside. Berserk. And I just got food. My mom made some food, right? And I only took break to go to like the bathroom or get food, basically, and get back to watching it, with food, of course. I didn't eat with my parents. Come on. And so on, right? So I binged the whole anime in one day, and then on Sunday, I was like, I need more, right? You know the feeling. So I went and read the manga immediately. This is how good Berserk was. It wasn't like I'm gonna wait or no. I went immediately and read the manga, and then I of course saw the Guts backstory and so on. It was different than in the anime. Talking about the Guts it was more brutal. And it's a little different setting there with the count and slug count and so on. It's a different starter in the manga, but whatever. This is not a Berserk review, but you get my point. And then I read Berserk, and I just kept reading it. So first I did read, I reread everything. Right? So I kept reading it, and I read it, and this is like, I'm sitting there, and it's like 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning on Sunday. This is a Monday, I mean. And this is true, yeah. I mean, I was obsessed immediately. It was amazing, and then I just kept reading it. And then I was like, oh shit, man! I got school, stuff like that. Teenage boy though. So I was like, hey, school. No, I like school. I was a good student. That's perfect. But whatever. I was like, maybe I should go to bed, right? Those moments where you. That's my first memory of Berserk. It was so good that I just kept reading it the whole night, and I don't remember exactly where I got in the manga, the first binge read, but I didn't finish it. But eventually, it was like 6 or so in the morning, and I was like, I need to go to sleep because I go to school like 2-3 hours. normal school day. So I went to bed, and I slept like 30 minutes, right? And I went to school, and then the whole school day I was like, gotta go home, read Berserk. I gotta read more Berserk. Where's my Berserk, right? And but afterwards though, because I am like I like a trainaholic kind of guy. I go to the gym all the time. But I went to the gym anyway, which sounds crazy, but I am that guy. I talked about it in my Vinland Saga review when I broke my fingers. Yeah, I broke my fingers going to work, and then we had a gym at the office, so I taped the dumbbell to my arm because I couldn't close my hand. So I took the dumbbell and I took tape and I put it in my hand so I could do this anyway. Right? So I am a crazy guy. So anyway, I went to the gym, even though I haven't slept more than half an hour or so, and I was like, Berserk, Berserk, Berserk. But I think I have to go to the gym, right? Because I have to go to the gym like once a day, right? It's like a compulsive thing, right? So I went to the gym after school then, the school gym, at the school gym, I suppose. And then one of my friends was there, one of my gym buddies were there, and I was like, I read Berserk the whole night, so I was there for like an hour. And he probably was like, this guy is crazy, because I just kept talking about Berserk. I was like, you have to watch Berserk, read Berserk. Is that the storyline? It's like Casca Griffith. It's the betrayal. I was like, lyrically obsessed with it already, right? I found it, half a day before, right? So there I spent the whole gym. Yeah, me and this guy, right, at the gym. And I was like, Berserk, and this character, and then this shit happens, and then like this appears happen, and then someone betrays him, and then she gets the horn, and then someone murder her, and I was like that, I haven't slept anything, because I was like, I kept reading it the whole night, right? I hadn't slept anything, and I was at the gym there, and I was like training with him, right, dumbbells and lifting, and I was like, and then this thing happened, and then you're like, going on here, and he looked at me like, he clearly zoned out probably. He clearly probably stopped listening to me after 5 minutes, right? But I just kept talking for like an hour about Berserk at the gym with him, and he probably ignored me for the whole. He thought I was super annoying, but I was like, Berserk. I just kept going. Oh, I was so I was so obsessed with it immediately, and of course then I ran home after the gym. My mom had some food, right? Got the food immediately. Just took the food, went down to my room. I lived in the basement. Went down in my basement, and I lived in my mother's basement. Yeah, it was the biggest room. There, my own entrance, awesome. But anyway, yeah, and I of course kept reading it, right? And then I read everything, and I read the rest of it that Monday. So I found it on Saturday the anime, then I watched the whole anime, then I read the whole manga on Sunday, Monday. Yeah. That's my first memory of Berserk. So this was like 90s. This is like way back. This is roughly 20 years ago. It wasn't in 90s. It was like 2001 something. Yeah, this is like 2000, early 2000, about 20 years ago. I don't remember exactly where the manga was at the time. I think it was somewhere around in the tower with Griffith is reborn. Spoilers. This is should be spoilers. Yeah, when Griffith is reborn or something around. I think the manga at that point was somewhere around there, maybe a little earlier. I can't remember exactly now, but it was. I remember, reading it and getting to like the scene when Guts is fighting the. I can't remember her name now, but the elf, the fake elf, the bee. And he leaves the forest with all his babies on him and all that stuff, right? And he meets the knights, and I think that was kind of where it was. I think in the end, my first day, a little bit into the tower, but I don't think the tower's finished. I think it was a rough the time we're halfway to the tower storyline. But anyway, yeah, that was an amazing experience, and it's very rare. I mean, I'm a huge manga and anime fan, but it's very uncommon, I feel, to really get so obsessed with something that I just need to binge everything, and read all the side stories and everything immediately. I think the latest manga I ever did that, so recommendation here then, not almost as good as Berserk, is Silent Voice. Yeah, Koto no Katachi. I have of course the DVD is on over there, but when I found that manga, I read the whole manga in one night. Yeah. Because I was doing this like, I don't know, getting random mangas. So like, this is can it be 7 years ago or something like that? I don't know. And manga wasn't finished by the time. No, the manga wasn't finished. It was like 5 volumes, I think 5 or 4 volumes at that time. But still, that was one of those mangas. I just, okay, it's a random manga. Let's just, buy this random collection of mangas, right? And I just kept reading it, and I was like, this is just amazing. Same thing there then that I had that, not work, I had work then instead. Same thing there. I just couldn't stop reading it, and I was like, oh shit, I have work tomorrow. I have work tomorrow. And I was like, oh, what's now? Oh, it's 4 a.m. in the morning, 5 a.m. in the morning. Oh yeah, I got to work at 7. I guess I go there without sleeping. But yeah, so that's my first memory of Berserk, right? And then of course I've been following it since then, and I recently actually reread the whole thing this last month. And I reread the whole Berserk. Yeah, I read Berserk every page again, from the beginning to the end, and saw the other 5 hand with other characters and so on. It's not a Berserk review, but yeah, saw Casca, getting a member back, kinda, and so on, right? So that's a long journey, It feels really strange, you have these stories you're following, like One Piece as well, similar to that, I guess, today, where you've been following it, because I've been reading One Piece also from, for 20 years, roughly more than 20 years probably now. Been reading something like that. I've been reading One Piece almost in the beginning, and it feels strange, knowing that the author that you have been following, and you've been buying these books, you've been reading that, and you've been, the games. I play the games and bought a friend of the games, and yeah, play the games back in the days and all this stuff, right? And it's a really weird feeling, and as I mentioned earlier, I do think it's really sad that he couldn't finish his masterwork, that he didn't get to finish where he wanted to finish, right? That he has a page left there. But Berserk was a very special manga. I mean, it was just a wasp, but it was just amazing, right? Every page was just every page was like a masterpiece, right? That's the thing, right? Berserk was again, the story is amazing too. Don't get me wrong, right? The story is amazing too in Berserk. The story is good too. Like, the story isn't bad in Berserk. It's really, really good. But the art, just the art alone, like, he was the king of manga, I think, from just the art. The art was like, oh my god, this page, this is like our week's work. He was like, it's just, that thing is just so annoying. I don't know, that's not a video, but you know what I mean. People that are watching this, you're manga fans, you know what I mean. And if it's, to me, it feels almost crazy how Mirai was so amazing that it was like some chapters, not only like the whole chapter, but like just page as a page, you felt like this should be in an art, gallery, you know what I mean? Not in like here's like a manga gallery. Like, he was so pretty good that you felt like some pages, it was just like, you know what I mean? I'm falling to the cry probably, and I won't go for in the video, but you know what I mean? Like, it was just so crazy because you could read his one chapter, and it was like, holy moly, it's like 7-8 pages in a row, that every page should have been like an art piece, you know what I mean? And I mean art piece as in, you go to the Louvre or something, you go to like some, museum of art, right? And it's like, here's this, very, very expensive painting for like $20 million, $1 trillion kind of painting, right? And this artist did this thing 100 years ago. Here's like this blah blah blah. It's like Berserk is the manga where it feels like every page is that thing, right? You feel like when you read Berserk, you're like, every page here is like a masterpiece. Every page here I could frame in and put in an art gallery, or put in some kind of museum, and people, if they didn't know where it came from, they would be like, oh, this is some kind of, Baroque, Gothic, dark fantasy painting that someone did 200 years ago, whatever. No, it's done by this guy Mirai. Okay, cool. And then it's like, this painting, oh, same guy too. You know what I mean? I can, like, that's so crazy with Berserk. I think that's just like, this is, Berserk to me is always gonna be the iconic. I mean, of course, Berserk is always to me gonna be, the number one seinen show, right? If you're talking about that genre of seinen, right? no matter what, Berserk is always gonna be, rest of my life, I'm always gonna be. It already has been for 20 years of my life. You know what I mean? 20 years of my life. If someone asked me, okay, what seinen would you recommend in Berserk? Berserk is also gonna be the best one. Amazing storyline, but especially then the grotesque dark fantasy, right? The the amazing art of Berserk. It sounds like an all-night effort art. No, I love the storyline too. I love the Casca and Griffith's storyline, everything, and then according to Guts and the dark stuff of it, and and the Skull Knight and everything, and the differences of just how crazy it was, right? And the troll scenes and everything. So don't get me wrong, and Puck, my little Puck man. So don't get me wrong, man. I love everything with Berserk, but I just feel like if there's one thing though that makes Berserk stand out so much, is of course the brutality generally, but also it's like how every page, especially the brutal page, right? Especially the page he's dark fantasy, right? Especially those pages was like, this should be in a museum. You know what I mean? And I really hope, of course, that that's gonna happen now. Well, I know there are specific Berserk museum, but it's so crazy to me sometimes when you sit there and I have been at this, the Louvre and so on. I've seen the Mona Lisa and so on. Right? My family lives in Paris. I've been there, right? And I've been around, and it just feels like, maybe 100 years from now, that will be what you find in the museum. Probably not though, because it's like the older it is, the more popular it is. But you know what I mean? It's just like, but I still think is that you have older artists, and I want to say this artist, not my point. But for example, we should give some credit to one people there. You have other artists like, for example, Kubo, okay? Bleach artist. I have a Bleach painted behind me here. Bleach art, right? He is amazing sometimes. I mean, I'm gonna shit on him now, but I mean, like he has some art pages in Bleach, and also he did this Dragon Ball art that was really cool, I felt, and so on. He's he's the guy that can do some pages that are just amazing. You're like, holy shit, man, this guy can do, he can do art, But I must think he's bad artist. He's I think that if anything, Bleach is really good art, right? Also, that I can say the art is definitely much better than the storyline in Bleach. That's an art anime, manga or anime, more than a good storyline. It's a cool manga, right? It's cool factor more than writing. In Berserk, I think the art and the writing is better than Berserk. But my point is that but my point is that Bleach, I think the manga is very good, right? In art, and very good art. But it's like sometimes he would make like, whoa, this should be in a museum, right? I'm not saying he's a great artist, right? He's a great artist, right? He's a great artist. But he's like, sometimes he's so brilliant that I'm like, this should be in a museum, right? In Bleach. Not every chapter, but sometimes, every now and then. That's Buffy the Bleach, right? But again, with Mirai, it's like, I'm not repetitive, but I was gonna hammer in the point that with Mirai, it's like, this is a museum. You know what I mean? Mirai was that guy that was like, here's a chapter. It took you a month or a half a year to get a new chapter, right? It's like half a year to get a new chapter, and it's only 10 pages, but every page is like a masterpiece. Every page itself is like a masterpiece. You really felt that he spent like a month per page. That's how you felt with Mirai. He spent it took him like a half a year to make one chapter, because he spent like a month per chapter, right? And it was just amazing, It's just so weirdly amazing, well done, right? And it's just like you never knew what to get in Berserk, right? And his mind was all, his fantasies and his ideas were crazy, and it was a spectacle every time, right? But I absolutely, genuinely think he is the greatest artist in every manga. I think there is not a single other mangaka on his level, right? In my opinion. And people say this is good, but in my opinion, I think he truly was the best person, on an art standpoint. I don't want to argue the storyline because he didn't finish it. Yeah, I mean, it's a harder to argue the storyline because the storyline, I think, is a masterpiece. But unfortunately, he didn't finish it, so I can't say that it was the best best storyline ever, because he didn't get to see where he actually wanted to go with. But I'm gonna say, the storyline also. The storyline is like 10 out of 10, okay? But the art is like 50 over 100 out of 10. The art was like, this is not, this like, I love manga, right? I love mangas, I love anime, but it's a little bit like this art style is too good for me. You know what I mean? This guy shouldn't be he shouldn't be a manga artist. He should sit there and draw cool. Yeah, he should do like Michelangelo and do Sistine Chapel. He should do al fresco. Like he should. If he's like Mirai, he should have spent time. Picture Mirai being born during the Italian Renaissance. Yeah, picture Mirai being from. Or actually, Italy wasn't Canada, but picture Mirai being in the Renaissance, different city-states than in Italy, like Venice and Florence. That was usually the big thing. I think, like example, Leonardo to Florence, next to from Assesco, Florence, like eastern part of Pisa, Florence, that kind of the region, and so on, right? The Michelangelo also from the area, and so on. Donatello and Raphael and Amadeus. So that picture, Mirai being in that era. He would have been one of those guys that was like he would be the church paintings, right? The murals or al fresco they're called. And he would be that guy. They made like statues, and it would be death and God and biblical storylines, with Satan and Lucifer, and it would be that kind of stuff. Probably, right? And he probably would be a legendary, religious art guy, right? If he lived in that place, because he basically does the anime now. But that's what I mean. It's almost like he's such a good artist, and you're like, why is he doing manga for? I love manga, but he's almost like he's too good for this medium. Like, and I think manga and anime is the best medium. Well, he's good for this medium. He should be recognized by everyone. You know what I mean? It's like he should be recognized as the greatest artist ever. Basically, it's just so crazy. But that's kind of what I mean. I think that he was the best artist ever. I think to me easily the best manga artist, right? He's the best artist guy ever. In my opinion, that's my genuine opinion. I think he's the best artist ever, and in manga then, and arguably he's better than all of this, old Renaissance painters and so on. Now I'm a big fan of religious art, though. I don't care about what the religion says, but I'm a huge fan of Christian religious art. I have studied some extent, right, and I'm a big fan of going to Italy, and especially Italy, but other countries too, like France and so on. And I have family, so it's easy for me to go there. But because my family lives there and around in Europe. But so I've seen a lot of these, religious art, right? And I guess one way was one reason why I liked Berserk too, because I liked it. I liked the dark fantasy, and I liked his take on the religion and his take on philosophy and like why is God evil, and I liked his ideas about his storyline as well there about the evil god of Berserk and Griffith and so on, right? And Griffith turning into this Messiah, this like Jesus figure and so on. All that was very interesting to me, so I guess I just liked that too. And I haven't talked about it yet, but you can say so much about Berserk, how important his work was too for like Dark Souls or other games and other manga and anime, like Black Clover, of course. Tabata is clearly a big fan of Berserk. He has the B-Elite, right? He has the Quillifot, which was part of Berserk, right? So for other artists as well, he's kind of like the grandpa, of the more brutal mangas, right? But really, not just itself, but I mean clearly stuff like, for example, I mentioned Dark Souls is heavily inspired by Berserk with some of the enemies and so on, right? So a lot of his dark fantasy creatures and other ideas, right, and the general setting has clearly been important, I think, for Japanese storytelling, for the Japanese culture as a whole, right? But also other countries too. I mean, I've been living in, America and Sweden and other countries around the world, and people are like, because I've been working, mostly with games, but also other stuff, entertainment stuff in my life. And, I met people everywhere that are Berserker fans. So, for example, let's make a new game character for our game. And the art guy is like, yeah, I'm inspired by, this. You remember this monster in Berserk? Let's do that thing. His take on it. I was like, yeah, that sounds cool, So, yeah, so I mean, I've been there, right? For example, but I mentioned earlier in that game, for example, that game company that I had, that was so bad at working at. One artist there, he was heavily inspired by dark fantasy, right? So he made one. We designed one character together that was inspired by Guts and Asta. It was like a Berserk Black Clover tribute, because some mixture there. and another guy we did, me and another artist, was like a pyramid head thing, Silent Hill. I mean, but you know what I mean. Like we, so of course, this kind of amazing art and ideas has been, uh, you know, important. I'll say one thing though. I'm not only a Berserk fan. I mentioned pyramid head. Another character in that game was inspired by One Piece, of course, because I'm a One Piece fan, right? So we did Bartolomeo. Actually, his powers were kind of like Bartolomeo, so it wasn't on that. But then there was some other ideas too. Like one bad guy I designed, and I cost what that bad guy was designed by was like a mixture between Professor X and Brainiac. So I'm not only a American anime guy, I also do DC comic and Marvel, but. Yeah, he was like Brainiac slash Professor X. He was like evil Professor X with Brainiac. So, but still though, I mean, like one character was a straight up homage to Berserk and some Black Clover stuff. He was like a Berserk monster with Asta's abilities. So like anti-magic, but like he had like Gust sword basically. Not really, but kind of. It was like a monster. It was like we designed this monster that was like a big dark monster. His name is Darkstar, and he had like this huge ass sword, right? Kind of like similar to Gut Sword, the Iron Slob. And he kind of was similar. Again, a homage, right? The artist guy did this, the final art. He did like a similar feel to him to, of course, the Berserk form, and Gus turned into the Berserk, right? So it kind of has that kind of shape, more of like a monster, but some kind of humanoid monster face, more like a prolonged nose or so on, right? Kind of that way. He had the iron slob thing, and then because I knew the Black Clover and Berserk, and like the author there likes him and so on. So his abilities were kind of like anti-magic, kind of a purge thing. So the game doesn't have magic, but basically, if he cuts someone with his sword, he will remove their buffs and the debuffs. He will purge them, right? He will kind of hit them with his it's like a sci-fi sword. It's like a monster from space, but still, he was like hit you with his sword, right? And he would like remove all of your stuff, right? And he would like remove your armor and so on. So it was like a Berserk. He kind of looked like Guts in his Berserk form, and he fought with the big sword and like Asta, right? And he kind of had Asta anti-magic basically stuff, right? He purge people, and he can also do what can he more do in the game? He can everything he doesn't purge. Oh yeah, he also bursts energy. That's true. He basically mana burst too. Yeah, he's someone he kind of drains their mana. That's true. Yeah. And then he had this like Berserk thing going on, of course, that he could also do a lot of friendly fire and so on. He could go crazy and hit everyone. Yeah, so he could go Berserk. So he could go Berserk. Basically, not really, but kinda. When I wrote the character, the point was like this is like seriously. I mean, this character was like a Berserk homage, so he had this passive that he couldn't be healed. That was a way he was balanced, because he was a very powerful character in the game, but he refused to team up with other people because he would also hurt his allies. So his ability was that he couldn't be healed or buffed or someone by his allies, right? So he was like a loner Berserk guy, and he would go crazy, right, and hurt everyone. He couldn't control himself, kind of like Gus, right? So that was kind of the point. So so you could play him in your team, but you couldn't support him. I mean, not actually like supporting magic, because he would refuse to be helped by allies, and he would. So that was like the point there. Man, it feels weird talking about this now. It's a random video, but it's just like that's what I mean. People like me that have read Berserk, right, for so many years. Of course, that has inspired my ideas, right? You know what I mean? That's how reality and culture works, right? Because I read Berserk for so many years. Of course, I would like to create a character or something like that, inspired by Guts, right, or similar to some kind of storyline to Berserk or whatever, right? Another character in that game he's inspired by Vash in Trigon, so it was like it was a more homage too. And then there was other characters too, like I mentioned. There was I wrote a storyline with one character that was inspired by Angel in X-Men, for example. He has like a mechanical angel, so there's like a similarity there. Not that much, but basically he had this ability called Torn Wings, right? So if he would shoot wings back at you and so on, like Angel would do in X-Men and so on. But yeah, this is a long video talking about that stuff. But I mean, there's a point, right? Yeah, like a point. So I think that's like what I did there for example, right, that is one of those things that how Berserk has infected people. I mean, as I mentioned, you see the same thing in like Black Clover, right? Where the author of Black Clover, Tabata, he's Quillifot. Of course, Mirai didn't invent the old religions of Quillifot, but I mean, there's a lot of Berserk, you know, Yami and Griffith. Sorry, man. Yami is clearly guts, and Griffith is clearly vengeance. I mean, that's the same thing, right? So Black Clover is very heavily inspired by Berserk, and that's how you see how important this kind of really iconic art is, right? And I mean artists in cultural art, right? Because I have seen other mangakas, right, being inspired by Berserk. Most of them by Clover is the most obvious example. And then you see people like me, right, working at some video game somewhere else, being like, oh, could we make a character kind of like Guts? That'd be cool, yeah, you know what I mean? And we have our own ideas. So I mean, his storyline, I didn't just copy freaking Berserk, I mean, the storyline of this guy called Darkstar, he's from a planet, like a hollowed out gravity planet, right? So I mean, it's completely other storyline, and his personality is different and so on to some extent, right? So, and it's a sci-fi game. It's like an alien monster, so it's not similar like that. But you know what I mean? Like that's kind of how you make a homage, right? Like he's an alien guy, but he looks somewhat similar to Guts guy, and he has the big sword, like he has the similar black sword, right? So it's like a similar thing, but it's of course it's not like I just took the same storyline, but otherwise it's very different, right? But I feel that's how a lot of art is, because you see something, you're like, man, that's interesting. Like I mentioned earlier, because I also like these religious paintings, right, and so on, like Renaissance paintings, and so on, right? I'm sure that Murai himself, probably studied a lot of Renaissance art and so on, right? He probably studied some Michelangelo and Leonardo, right, so on, to come up with ideas. I would guess so. I mean, I'm not sure, but I mean, a lot of his art was, of course, very Biblic, right? It was very Christianity, a lot of Dante's Inferno, the Divine Comedy kind of feel to it. So, I mean, I'm sure he found some cool ideas there, right? And then we have stuff like the Japanese myths, like they have the fire wheel monks. That's from Japanese, like Oda Nobunaga kind of storyline, right? With the fire monks. It's also in like Neo, so I guess the wheel zombie guys, they're probably from that Japanese Shintoistic, or it's more like I guess the Oda Nobunaga storyline. But that's how it is, right? Like this is a stupid side point, but I just want to point it out because I think it's funny. For example, when I worked on one game, I had this manga that could revive people and so on, and he had these different names after Buddhism. He had like Samsara and Katmanda. He had a different Darka, so he had different like Buddhist concept, right? Like Samsara as an ability. And then I played Persona 5 last year, Persona 5 Royal, and then they had the exact same ability on like a zombie monk in Persona 5 with the exact same name, Samsara. And I was like, oh man, it's exactly what I personally designed like 4 years ago in this other game. I mean, maybe it existed earlier in Persona 5, Persona 3, 4 maybe had the same ability probably, but I think it's kind of funny that you can see how people are inspired by the same thing. Oh yeah, someone else in Japan at Atlus also probably read that like Buddhist book that I read. You know what I mean? So I'm sure that's what I mean. I'm sure that Berserk, being this like super iconic seinen manga, has it's such an important storyline or such an important book there because it really or manga there because it's gonna be like I mentioned earlier, Dark Souls whatever, right? Like those people from Software, it's called that company. I mean, people working at that has certainly read Berserk. Right? People like me, as I mentioned earlier, like it's not like I just randomly wanted to do this Berserk character, right? Inspired Berserk character, but also did my coworkers, right? Not all of them, but I mean 2 coworkers. Well, like, yeah, Berserk is awesome. You know what I mean? So it's like I don't know what I'm doing here now. I'm just talking how important. But this is like one of the most important mangas ever, right? Let's just say that, yeah. Well, obviously Berserk, it's always going to be one of the most important mangas in the history of mankind, right? And it's kind of back to my previous point that it feels so sad that he didn't finish it, that he couldn't finish his masterwork. He couldn't get to the end before he died. And even if he not to be a downer, but I mean, even if he told his assistant, "This is what I want to do. This is what I wanted to go with." I mean, there's no way they are gonna be able to perfectly do his storyline. You know what I mean? Maybe I don't know what they're gonna do though. Maybe they're just gonna release a book. Yeah, maybe they won't draw it. Maybe they're just gonna release a book, kind of ending how he wanted it to end. I'm hoping he was down here, but I mean, certainly for selfish reasons too. Of course, I wanna see how it ends. I wanna know how it's supposed to end, but I think for his own legacy too, right? That hopefully he had time to write it down how he wanted to end the storyline, at least the general premise, so people can see his finished vision, right? That's what I meant earlier. You know, he had a vision, and he didn't get to finish it. You know, that's very that's frustrating. Yeah, to say the least. Um, it's, but yeah, that's some of my Berserk. I probably been inspired by Berserk and all this stuff too. But that game, that character, I mean, that game, he was straight up Berserk. I mean, I even the way I work with on games is that I always have a cultural reference page. So I design my characters, right? I do the concept art and I write how it should work, the balance and the math and so on, right, and the mechanics. And then I always have the last pages, or the last pages, but in the last bit of it, I always have a cultural reference thing. So it's like, oh, this is a reference to this book or something like that, right? So, oh, this is a reference to this religion, or this is a reference to, this famous foreign knight, or this is a reference to green soil and green, something like that. Yeah, like I always do that. So, of course, on that character, I was like, this is a reference to Berserk. So, it was, yeah. But I'm sure a lot of people on the same team, right? I don't know. Feels strange. I think it feels extra strange too because, as I said earlier, it's like you always expect it to happen to you. You know, I mean, yeah, it's just like because he always was sick or something. Because he always knew that he was sick too. He was just so. Was like he was always, oh, I can't work this month. So on. It's. I mean, he was pretty young, like 50. Yeah, like he did it in his 50s, man. It wasn't even. I mean, it's like my mom and so on. Yeah, that feels weird too. I think about that, but that feels weird too, man. Like he's younger than my mom. Like he's almost like he's like my dad's age, kind of. My dad was very young when I was born, so yeah, my dad was very young when I was born, so it's kind of like my dad's age. Yeah, but that feels weird too, yeah. But my mom's older, yeah. Like it feels weird too that he, like the. No, but like he wasn't even that old. Yeah, like he wasn't even that old, man. He died. He could have many years left on him, right? To work on his work and so on. And I guess lastly, you wondered what could he more do, You wondered what could he more do. Maybe he could stop doing manga and do my art. He could stop doing manga and do those paintings I wanted, and do those grandiose paintings that I wanted. He could do the church paintings that I wanted, the frescoes that I wanted. No, but that's the question too. You wonder, like, I wonder what he would have done if he didn't do Berserk. I wonder what he was supposed to do after he finished Berserk. I wonder what he would have done after he was finished. Maybe he would never do anything else. Maybe he would be like, I'm finally done. Maybe he would have started doing something completely else, right? That's interesting too. I don't know. It just feels like such a waste, right? I just wanted to. I don't know. And I know he did some other stuff in the end. Yeah, and I know there's some other. I know there's some other stuff, but like, yeah, I don't know. Because a person like Mirai that was so talented, he could have done anything. He could have painted anything. It's that's something we never get to see now too. I mean, I know it is more stuff, but you know what I mean. Like after, that's one of the things. You think about it with One Piece too. Like I wonder if Oda ends One Piece, what will it do afterwards? You know what I mean? You just wanna see what is the next idea. You always wonder that too because with Mirai and Oda and whatever Kishimoto, the people that have done this manga so many years, you kind of see what the vision is though. You know exactly where you're going. You can't say this is gonna be the end, but you kind of have a vision of, okay, I see kind of where you're going with this, general premise, right? So at the end there, before you get to the end, So you always wonder a little bit, like, I wonder what the next idea is, you know? I wonder what the next thing they're gonna do when they're completely out of the storyline and they're gonna do new characters and so on. You always have that. It's like, you know, you wanna see what the other ideas are, you know? You wanna see what they can come up with next as well, right? Just from like a general interest, right, in their work, in their art, right? You wanna see what they come up with. And also kind of fun when they do something else, right? And they don't even do the same medium. So it's kind of cool, but yeah, whatever. Feels weird. Hopefully hopefully he wrote it down forever for his own legacy and so on. Hopefully they have the actual ending and so on. So we know what he was thinking. Because, you know, that's what I'm thinking. I want to know that he I wanna see his journey to the end, right? But yeah, that's it. I don't know what to say more. I mean, I've been I don't know what you call it. Just here not a rant. Like I wasn't ranting. I don't know what you call it, but I'm just reminiscing. I don't know. Reminiscing. Yeah, I guess I was reminiscing when I talked about my first impression of Berserk when I went all gung ho. I also remember so much because I'm thinking about that years afterwards. I was trying, you know. I remember so bad because not only how I binged everything like in 2-3 days, but I just remember that Jim, as I mentioned, honestly, because he's a friend of mine, pretty good friend, right? And then I am just like Berserk, Berserk, you know. I just remember how insane I was, and I was thinking about it afterwards, you know, for years to come. I was like, man, I found this manga and anime. It was so amazing, and I just couldn't, you know, contain my joy of it. But the way I tried to motivate him to watch it or read it was probably the worst way possible. I just come off as like a complete lunatic, you know. I was like, oh, it's the best thing ever. Trust me, it's the best thing ever. You know, I was like, yeah, you know, I just come off with him as like an insane person, right? So I was thinking about afterwards for years. I was like, man, that guy probably never read Berserk because I was like, Berserk. he thought I was high, you know. He thought I was like, is Berserk a cue for something else, you know? Yeah, like he. That poor guy probably never got into Berserk because I sold it in. I oversold it so much that he probably thought I was insane, you know. Yeah, like that he never. So I was just so into it. I was just crazy. I remember that feeling, you know. You find something so good, and at that time I had, of course, still read a few mangas. But this was early 2000 then, so yeah, I mean it wasn't like overpopulated. But also the reason I said lastly, and people are saying, why did you read Berserk 2000? It's so late. The thing is that this is kind of almost you barely had internet at this time. You know, this is kind of when you had forums and so on. The reason why I found Berserk was because someone was telling me about Berserk, you know, at some like narrative forum or something. It's like back in the days before you had modern social media, right? This is like, I'm talking, you know, 2000 here, like 99 something. I'm talking like it's very back in the days. So the reason I even found Berserk then, I think it was like on a narrative forum, and you know, we didn't have internet. We had internet. We had we had a squishy modem, right? Yeah, we didn't have the good internet, and we had that kind of modem, right? And someone was like, man, you gotta watch Berserk, and I was like, Berserk? Oh, it's the best seinen ever. It's like, oh, interesting. Okay, you know. Some guy I trusted on some narrative forum was like, oh, you think narrative is good? We're gonna watch Berserk. And then the thing here too is that back in the days then, you had such a slow internet, so it took like a few days to get Berserk on your PC, so you had to like prepare it. Yeah, so this is my last story then. This is the back in the days, guys. Okay, I admit it, back in the days. You know, you went on on the seas. This is like 99, okay? This is back in the goddamn days. You couldn't like buy, you couldn't find it anywhere. I mean, it wasn't like it was being sold in my home country for that matter at all, really, right? The manga was eventually, but not the anime. So you know, I bought the manga later, right? I bought the manga in English, yeah. But the anime you couldn't find in my country. So back in the days, someone recommended, oh, you need to watch the anime. I was like, okay, but it takes like 4 or 5 days to get the anime on your PC. You know, like yeah, like seriously, you had to like prepare. And like starting to, you know, get it down because you had that modem, right? So if you wanna watch an anime back in '99, you had to really trust that person to be like, oh, you're sure it's good? Is it really good? Okay, so you had to be like, this is what I have to pick because it's gonna take me like Monday to Friday to get it on my PC, and then I can watch it, right? It was the same thing when I, so that's a thing too, I guess, in the storyline I didn't think about. But yeah, it was back in the days, and it's also kind of when I told my friend, like, you have to watch Berserk. He's like, Berserk, you know, I'm like, spend your week on Berserk, yeah, because you only had a very limited bandwidth, you know, you had the bandwidth for like one anime per week, basically. I was like, your next week should be Berserk. that was the thing, you know. I remember that now. That's part of the story, I suppose. Back in the days, yeah, you could only get like, you know, one anime. You could only watch one anime per week, basically. I mean, seriously, because me and my best friends, right, we bought the VHS tapes, right? So we had Dragon Ball like on VHS and so on. They had to buy, you know, the actual VHS tapes. Like, this is how bad. This is all this was. Yeah. This was before, yeah. So you had that stuff. And you kind of had you kind of started having the Blu-ray and so DVDs. So yeah. So you could buy a few animes on VHS. A few was airing on TV, like Sailor Moon and so on, right? But all the animes you have to, like, you know, buy them on VHS, right? Like Tetsu Boy and so on. I had Tetsu Boy on VHS, right? So I had to buy it to VHS. And then you started having the internet. But there was no, you know, there was no Crunchyroll, there was no freaking, you know, there was no like, you know, streaming sites to actually watch the league. No, there wasn't. So instead you had to find this like some weird page, and you would like you would do it directly. So you'd be like, well, it takes like 50 hours to get it down, and you'd be like, I watched this anime on Saturday, it started on Monday, and your PC had to run during the night, right? So you had to had the PC on during the night too, so because otherwise it would take 2 weeks. So, or if it was direct, you couldn't even turn it off. You have to actually have it. No, seriously. I remember so many anime. It was so back in the days you had to like direct it, so you couldn't even turn it off. You had to like, go from, you know, 0% to 100 in one setting. So you'd be like, well, it's like 5 days. My PC has to be on for 5 days, man. I probably should have mined Bitcoin that back in the days, but that's how we did it. Yeah, I remember that story, but yeah, so that's part of the story too. That I had this Berserk, right? That was like the anime of the weekend, right? I binged it immediately, and you know, usually you have to watch it. You know, you watch an anime, you take it like one episode per day, but it's like a whole week. And then when I got to the gym, as I mentioned, I was like, this has to be the anime. You have 1 day a week. You show your bandwidth for Berserk, and he was like, no, I heard about this anime or this show from my friend, the other guy, right? Like, screw him! Do bandwidth for Berserk! I was kind of like that, you know, for an hour. I was like, Berserk, man! And I was in the gym, you know, lifting weights. I was like, Berserk! Like, I was kind of like that. Oh, true. I had to try to motivate him to spend his whole, you know, modem bandwidth to get Berserk, right? But he was like, he didn't trust me. I was like, trust me! This is the best thing ever! Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, I remember, it's coming back to me now. I think about it. This is like 99. It's coming back to me now. Thinking about it. That's a part of it. We didn't have, you know, we didn't have the speed thing. Yeah, we had the screeching mode and shit and so on. That's true. That was a part of it. That made the whole thing even more important to be like, because as I mentioned, that if you wanted an anime to watch, right, you have to be sure that's the anime you want to watch. Basically, you want to spend time on the wrong show, right? It's not today where you keep like, bad anime, stop anime, Netflix changed my Netflix changed the that wasn't that good. It wasn't that back 20 years ago. It was like, well, I spent 5 days getting this anime here. It better be good. Like, your ass not gonna do something else, I guess. That's how it was. I remember it now. Holy shit, yeah, that's the thing. I'm so old. See? That's how you know I've been reading Berserk for many years, because I remember back in the days when we didn't have that stuff. Oh man, I remember now. Like, yeah, like a story, but now the storyline gets better, right? Because I remember how, I remember back in the days. It's like a side note, but I remember the same year that with Berserk, it's like late 90s, right? I had some anime I got down on my PC. And it was some really weird ecchi anime, and there was no, you know, there was no subtitles on Japanese. Like, I started, you know, watching on anime, but subs immediately, right? And I started Japanese as a kid, right? Immediately, 14, 15 in school, right? And I remember I got this anime down. It was the same thing. I got some really weird ecchi anime down. I was like 15, so like, you know, there's like fine, right? But it was really weird, and I was like, well, I can't just swap the anime because it's the only anime I have. It took me like a day to get it down, right? So I'm like, I have this anime. It's like, you know, this is the anime I have to watch today, right? You know, when I'm eating or something, right? And I was like, this is so bad. But I just kept watching the anime. But I was like, I can't swap. This you know, I mean, back in the days, you didn't have a channel. You couldn't swap. And I like, but if I'm gonna go to watch an older anime, I have to wait, you know, for like 4 or 5 hours, right, to get the older anime probably or something like that. So I was like, I have warm food here, right? I want to eat that while I watch an anime. This is the anime I have to watch. And it was this really weird ecchi anime. It was really weird, like it's really weird. It was very like there was some. It wasn't the hands up, but it was like a really weird ecchi anime, and there was like some, you know, cis Oneshan kind of thing going on, and she was obsessed with her Oneshan. It's a really weird anime, and it wasn't good at all. It was like really bad, and I was like, gotta do what I gotta do. I was like, I had no choice. So that's how it was back in the days. Yeah, you were stuck with like this is the decision you had. Yeah, I only watched episode 1 of that one, and I was like, oh, this really sucks. But I was like, I have nothing else to watch. That's how it was, yeah. So when I was trying to then again, I'm sorry, but you know, scatterbrain today, yeah. But of course, when I was trying to convince him at the gym to get this anime, he was like, "Nah, I only get one anime a week." I said, "This is the anime," and I was like, "This is that week anime." You know, it's like very important for me. Like, this is the anime you get this week. Then do it. You know, I was like, "Do it." This is the anime of choice then. But yeah, that's like I said, that's how you know what I've been reading and watching Berserk since back in the days, since back in the when it aired, right? But yeah, the anime landscape was very different back then. I can say one last thing. When I was a kid, my cousins recorded Star Singer on TV. You know, I grew up in Star Singer. Yeah, that's one of those things. You know, when I was a kid, you had like Star Singer, Sailor Moon, like something else. Yeah, like you all had that. Like it's really weird, right? It's really weird back in the days because you remember how you had a very few animes and mangas to read and watch. Like you had like 4 or 5 shows, right? So that's also one thing with Berserk, because Berserk is so old, so you kind of remember people talking about Berserk and on the forums. On yeah, Berserk was one of those the shows that you had in the grapevine kind of back in the days, right? Because it's so old, right? So you had people talking about in the 90s about Berserk. Yeah, like it's one of those legendary shows that people had read, right, and watched. Yeah, but one thing also that I think unites people with Berserk. My last thing here is that, like, you know, when you get to college or whatever, right? When you know you're a nerd, you get to college. I'm a nerd. I get to meet other nerds, right? It's like everyone's like Berserk. I read Berserk. Yeah, so that was also one thing too, right? That Berserk was so iconic when I got to college. A few years later, then, right, in the 2000s, I got to college, and it's like every goddamn nerd here that I met, right, otaku nerd, they're like Berserk. Oh, I read Berserk. Everyone's like Bleach, Berserk. Everyone's like Bleach, One Piece, Naruto. Because these are doing the big three, right? So everyone's like Big Three, Berserk, and there was like some of those shows that everyone had read. I was like, oh man, you see that chapter of Berserk? Yes, everyone was always like Berserk, right? So that's one of those things too that you one of those mangas where everyone knew about it. Everyone of the nerds, of the alpha nerds, everyone had read Berserk, right? And the Big Three, then yeah, those 4 mangas were the Big Four, really. Yeah, those 4 mangas were those like mandatory mangas to read, right? If you were like a 18-year-old college kid, like a manga, you had read those 4, and some other stuff too. You had seen like Fullmetal Alchemist, and it's like, well, yeah, you've seen, and I mean FMA, you know, the old one, 2003, yeah, like everyone said FMA, everyone, there was one of those classic animes too that everyone had seen FMA like twice, 3 times, right? Yeah, there was one of those classic stuff too. And if you were really nerdy, some other stuff was like Akagi and Kadi and so on, you know, gambling, yeah, the legendary gambling animes, like, yeah, you know, those was like the very specific shows you got into too and so on. That's how actually why I found Akagi and Kadi, for that matter, you know, because one of my best friends, met him in college then, you know, big manga anime fan, of course, he's read Berserk and so on. He was the guy that was like, oh, have you read Kaji or you know, watched Kaji and Akagi and so on? I was like, no, what's that? He's like, oh, it's the ultimate gambling anime. Like, that's a legendary gambling seinen anime. Oh, interesting. So that's how I got into that. Because him and a few other people were like, oh, if you ever want to see a gambling anime, oh, it's this guy. He does this, you know, seinen gambling, which I, of course, if you haven't read or seen them, I recommend also. Kaji is like my favorite anime of all time, right? So I also recommend it, yeah. So that's how I found Kadi, my friend. He was like, Kadi, you're gonna love that shit, man. Especially because I studied like human behavior and game theory, you know. So I was like, yeah, that's a kind of that. It's like, not only do I like Kadi because it's a masterpiece, also, but also because it's perfectly fitting my education. Like that's why I have a master's degree basically in, you know, Kadi in like gambling behavior. So I was like, well, it's kind of fitting for my book. So Kadi is also one of my sweet animes, right? But anyway, yeah, some life story there. I made it all about me again. No, but I was like, And he's come back to me. Oh yeah, now I remember why I was so incredibly onto him to make him like you have to read watch Berserk because yeah, you only had that as I mentioned the limited of like one anime per week, and I was like, this is the anime you gotta watch this week. This is the anime, and I refused to give it up, you know. And I think about 2 hours at the gym, right? So I was like sitting there with my numbers, Berserk, and so yeah, so it was extra crazy. And he was like, what's wrong with this guy? Listen to me. I was like super, you know, into it. But anyway, that's my Berserk life story. See you guys with more anime manga. Hunt the Demon Lord. Black Clover tomorrow, probably. Yeah, Black Clover. Yeah. See you guys and have a great day.